What's going on, everyone? This is Lawrence Yo from More to That, and welcome. I am back here, just recording this thing. I've been, lots been going on, I guess. At the same time, not really. So I have been in Toronto for the last 3 months, or I was in Toronto rather, visiting my wife's side of the family and just giving them the opportunity really to hang out with my daughter. She is now 2, which is pretty incredible, pretty ridiculous. But we're here now. We're back in LA. Just got back on Thursday, and I just thought I'd flip on the camera, record, because it's been a while. It's been a while since I've caught up and just chatted about all kinds of random shit, right? So on the creative side of things, I have been writing a lot. I've been writing a lot, but haven't really been publishing it. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that I'm kind of just writing to write. I think sometimes writing doesn't have to serve some sort of external goal and some external purpose. You know, of course, we know about the audience building effects that it has and the ability for it to create all these opportunities for you and, all this good shit. But I think the true power of writing, really lies in its ability to as a reflective mechanism for you to figure out what you think. Like that's what writing truly is about. And I find that the best writers, or at least the people that I look up to, are the ones that really utilize their writing as a form of self-expression, and also in a way, and if they do present it to an audience, like it's done in a kind of artistic, artful way, instead of like, hey, I'm trying to build a fan base, I'm trying to get a bunch of eyeballs on my stuff, things of that nature. I I'm not someone that's against audience building and all this stuff, but I do feel like I think if there was a tension between art and business, I'm much more on the art side of things. So I always take a look and see like, oh, okay, given the audience size that I do have, I can monetize it better, or I can do all this kind of stuff. But in the end, to me, it just feels like that process of just trying to build an audience, trying to use words and your phrasing and taking out words and punctuation so that it fits this particular goal and motive. Like that's just not what it's about for me. And over the last month or two, I've just been writing every day, just to write, but also doing it in a not just complete like, hey, this is just for myself. It's not just a journal. I'm also writing as if it is being read by one or two people. So it puts me in the frame of mind where I still have to think about how I want to structure what I'm saying, because that's really important too, to figure out how you're going to structure these things. And you don't want to just make a full stream of consciousness kind of thing, or else it just sounds like a madman, right? And in that case, you're better off maybe just watching a show or something like that than reading someone's scattered random thoughts that are completely incoherent. So with that said, I have been writing a lot. And, today I don't really have a particular theme I want to talk about, but there is one thing that is coming up to the brim of my mind here, which is my general thoughts on rest. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of like, what does it mean to rest? What does it mean to be able to um, just let go of whatever you're doing and just take a moment to just chill, right? And how that element of just chilling seems to be more and more difficult. Um, and maybe this is just for me personally, but I found this to be the case with a lot of other friends that I've talked to, especially a lot of creators who kind of are always on, and how when your mind is the primary vehicle tool you use to work and to create your art and so forth, um, and physical cues don't really exist to remind you to shift yourself out of that mind state. Like there's no physical office, there's no commute ride and so forth. You're kind of localizing this all to your environment. Then it becomes hard to switch on and off what it means to work. And how does that translate really into regular kind of waking life? Well, the first thing is that, when you're saying that you're going to rest, a lot of the time the things that you're doing when you're resting, you're still orienting these activities towards something that could be purposeful with your work. So let me explain. Like, let's say that while you're resting, you take out a book and you want to read that book, right? And it's very leisurely. From the outside, it's like, man, dude's chilling, just got the book open and just reading. But a lot of the time in this case, what a lot of people, including myself, end up doing is that you're reading things and you start thinking like, oh, that's a good bit here to highlight that I could use for something else, right? Or that's an interesting thing that I can incorporate into another essay. That quote that he said, that Plutarch quote, woo! I'm gonna throw that in too for some other thing. Like all these things start to pop up where you're like, oh, that's useful. This is utilitarian aspect to what you're doing. So even though you're sitting there and you're supposed to be immersed in this leisurely time for yourself, what you're really doing is just thinking about work and thinking about how the stuff that you are accumulating in your restful state can be used in the context of your work life. So it just kind of keeps going here. And I called this phenomenon the omnipresence of work in one of my essays. And it's exactly that, where you're just continuing to think about work, even though you're supposed to kind of just, hey, shift things down and just relax. So now, with that said, what does it mean to rest? It's an interesting question. Like, what does it mean to rest? Is it to just lay low? To not do anything? Is it to meditate? Is it to sleep? Is that what rest is? Is it just your consciousness turning off for a moment? What exactly is it? So in the example that I described earlier, it's like from a physical standpoint, or just from the observer's point of view looking in, like that person is resting. He's got a book open on a couch, just reading. But within the mind state of that person that is kind of in this utilitarian mode of, hey, what can I pick out from this book that I can use later? It's not really restful. And conversely, right, like you can be doing something that is physically strenuous. Let's say, for example, exercising. So in my case, I go for a morning run every morning for about 30 minutes. And interestingly enough, I consider that to be more restful than even when I am sitting there reading a book where I'm highlighting. And I've noticed that a lot of time when it comes to rest, it feels like rest when you're doing something that is no longer trying to contribute to your sense of self-worth. So whatever activity you're engaged in doesn't have any like tangibility to it that can add to your sense of self-worth, to your goals, to your motives, to your desires, your incentives. Like all this stuff is at a standstill. And I think that's where rest really comes through, and is when you actually feel like you are simply being with what is, without your mind being directed to some sort of ambitious or audacious goal. And I think that in the context of the book example, what rest would look like is if you are opening up a book and you are there to completely just immerse yourself in the experience, to walk along with the author with no intention to highlight stuff, to take notes, to figure out what goes where and to how you're going to use this information in the context of your own creative endeavors. All that stuff comes to a standstill, and you are just dedicating that time to being with that work of art. So in my case, what I do is I read a lot of fiction. Um, Mainly because when I read fiction, I might have some interesting, ideas pop up for something I want to write, but it's rare. Like, I think when I open up a fiction book, I'm it's just like me turning on some sort of movie to watch for the next hour or two, right? Like when you're watching a movie, you're not sitting there with a notepad cataloging things along the way, like, oh yeah, that was a good one. That was a good point for me to use later. Like, yeah, that character did this and that. Like you're not thinking about it and analyzing it in that way. Maybe you'll do that afterwards, but while you're watching the movie, you're not really in that state of mind. Unless, of course, you are a film critic or you're a student that is studying that film. You see how when the activity is encased in some sort of external goal or some sort of ambition to further yourself, to further your self-worth, that is not restful. But for me, there is nothing obviously utilitarian when I'm reading fiction. I'm just reading the story just to be immersed in it, and that's more than enough. So it's in that sense where I feel like, okay, yes, I am resting. I do feel at ease. I do feel like there's nothing more for me to do. So it's only really in that state of mind where it feels like I am just being. So I think in that case, when you really look at it in that way, then you're able to just be, in many contexts. 1 second. Hi. Okay, I'm recording right now. I'll be there in a bit. See, I do all this in real time. So that was my wife. They're telling me lunch is all good to go. But once again, I don't do any edits with these things. I just let it straight go on. Makes me feel like I'm there with you, chilling, resting. Okay, so what was I saying? Yeah. So I think that notion of when I'm engaged in an activity that it doesn't contribute to any of the things that I desire, that I want, that is when it feels like I'm resting. So I think the takeaway here really is that rest is not just it's not idleness, right? Nor is it some sort of prescribed activity that we continuously refer to as rest. Like it's not you just kind of chilling throughout and not, like not thinking or anything like that, or an absence of thought. Although that can contribute to rest, but like even something like meditation sometimes is not really quite rest, right? Because meditation, you're there in the context of, hey, the goal I have here is peace of mind, right? And given that that is the state that you are longing for through meditation, meditation itself also becomes some sort of actualizing force toward that person you want to be. So even in that case, meditation is not rest, even though it may look like it, right? Eyes closed, sitting, doing nothing. So it's not really even the art of doing nothing. That's not quite rest either. I think rest has to be tied in with some sort of activity. But the activity on it by itself has to have no intrinsic value. It has to have it doesn't contribute to any social standing. It doesn't contribute to the things that you want to do in your life. All you do, you just are. You just being in that context. And that is enough. And that is perfectly fine. So whatever that activity may be for you, I would encourage you to kind of think through that a little bit more. And for me, like I said, I read fiction. I exercise. I consider exercise to be a form of rest. And then I'll just watch a TV show, but watch a show just to get lost in it. I'm not thinking about what the show means or anything. That kind of stuff I could do later and reflect on. But when I'm there, I'm just completely present. Another thing also is if you're a parent or, have responsibility in that kind of capacity, just being with a loved one and just being completely immersed there, right? Like you're not talking about what you got to do. You're just there and you're present and you're just enjoying that experience, whether you're going out or whether you're at home. Like that is another example of rest. No, but it does matter what you're thinking during that time together and what you're communicating, because in some contexts you might be talking about the bills and housework, and that doesn't feel like rest because you know that these things got to get done in order for you to feel like you have your shit together, right? And anything that contributes to getting my shit together is not rest. Rest is the assumption that the shit's already in place. It's okay. Everything is all right. That aside from my thoughts, everything is okay. And in the end, I think that that is what rest ultimately is. This is a conundrum that I'm continuing to think through and I'm continuing to sort out, but it's something that has been quite useful for me to think through. So hope that gave you some food for thought. I'm really happy to be back. And I really am planning on doing more of these at a regular cadence. So I will talk to you later. All right. Bye.